can enjoy the rest of our evening. And if I say no, my child's going to tantrum for the next 40 minutes, and it's going to make everyone miserable. It's a parenting decision everyone makes every day, multiple times. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that I think there's physiology underlying this that makes it challenging for parents. So our studies, which are funded by the NIH and the American Heart Association, we call them the appetite, behavior, and cortisol studies. They have about 550, 600 children in them. And what we do is we actually meet with families with children enrolled in Head Start or young children whose families are eligible for WIC. And what we're targeting is low-income families. We meet with the child 3 days in a row, 3 times a day, and we actually get a sample of their saliva because you can measure cortisol in saliva so that we can tell what their stress patterns are. Then we do questionnaire-based measures of dietary intake, emotion regulation, eating behavior, the family environment, stress, and we're also looking at sleep. Behavioral measures of eating in the absence of hunger and response to stressors. And eating in the absence of hunger, just very briefly, it's a classic psychology test where you give a child or anyone a good healthy meal, and then after you say to them, are you all done? Would you like some more of that salad or whatever you're feeding the kid, a turkey sandwich? And then once the child says, oh, I'm all done, I've had plenty to eat, then you say, great, let's go in the next room and play. And in that room with all the toys, there are also 10 bowls of snack food. And so we videotape it, and we want to see which children are going to eat the snack food instead of playing with the toys, even though they just said they were full. And what you find is that the children who eat that snack food, they're more likely to become obese years later. And people think that that's driven by genetics, that they're just people who are more predisposed to be doing that. These are some of our preliminary results. This is with the first 40 or 50 subjects. We're still examining the rest. And I'm sorry, these children in this slide are between 3 and 5 years of age. Our overall study is starting at age 21 months. So what you see here is that the children who are the healthiest weight, remember when I was talking about that healthy morning cortisol peak? The children with a normal weight, they have that beautiful, healthy morning cortisol peak. This is the cortisol. And then they drift down over the course of the day like you would expect. The overweight and obese children, it's a little blunted. They're not as high as they should be. And what this raises the question about is, are these children who have had repeated bursts of cortisol in their young lives, even in the first 3 or 4 years, so that they're now all of a sudden already developing what we call that hypocortisolism pattern, which is the pattern of exposure to chronic stress. And then this is the exact same group of kids based on a questionnaire we got from their mother, and this is the cortisol from their saliva. So we asked the mothers, how often do you have to say no when your child asks you for something to eat? And what this is implying, I think, is the child's asking all the time, and the mother's having to say no, no, no all day long because this child's asking for food all the time. What you find is that the kids who have that really healthy cortisol morning peak, their mothers are saying, I don't have to tell them no. Rarely, sometimes, it's just not happening, not a problem in my house. But the mothers of children who have this blunted cortisol pattern reflecting chronic stress, they're saying, often, almost always, I'm having to say no to my child. They're always asking me for food. And then similar pattern on the bottom. When told no, when asked for food, how often did your child become upset, like have a tantrum? Rarely is this line. So mothers who said, I tell my child no to food and they're fine, they go about playing. This is this group, they have that very healthy morning peak. The other kids are lower, this chronic stress pattern. So this is what we're very interested in. The last study I'll talk about in the last 5 minutes is what we're calling the Growing Healthy study. So this is a grant funded by the USDA. And what happened was about a year and a half ago, the USDA put out a call for applications around the nation and said, we're looking to fund 15 $5 million projects around the nation to examine behavioral interventions for obesity that are novel and new, that are focused on low-income children. And so we were interested in this idea of if you can teach very young children how to better regulate emotion and behavior, how to calm themselves down when they're upset, and if you can teach their parents parenting skills around how can you better manage your child's behavior and temper tantrums and social skills and emotions so that you can be a more effective parent. If we do an intense intervention like that, will we actually see an effect on childhood obesity that simply telling parents, exercise more, feed your kid more vegetables, doesn't seem to be helping with? So we were very lucky to be funded to do this study. It's with 600 low-income preschool-age children and their parents. We're working with 3 Head Start agencies in Michigan. One is the Jackson Community Action Agency, which is in Jackson and Hillsdale counties. One is Michigan Family Resources, which is Grand Rapids, Kent County. And the last one is 8CAP, which is the counties sort of north and east of Grand Rapids that are listed there. The interventions that we're doing, first there's something we call POPS, which is the Parents of Preschool series, and the second intervention is the Incredible Years series, which we call IYS. POPS is 8 teaching sessions with the parents. This is the nutrition education program that we want to see if this has an effect. The parents come in the afternoon or evening to Head Start, and they get 8 one-hour sessions. The children get sessions during preschool class time. The people teaching these sessions are master's level nutrition specialists from the state extension program and the Head Start teachers. What are they teaching? These are the topics: encouraging a variety of fruits and vegetables, child-sized portions, learning to like new foods, decreasing TV time, limiting sugar-sweetened beverages, modeling positive mealtime behaviors, making healthy meals at home, how to deal with eating out, parent and child roles in the feeding and eating relationship, recognizing hunger and fullness cues, and eating breakfast every day. IYS is the second intervention, which is called the Incredible Years series. This is a well-validated intervention coming out of Seattle from psychologists who have been doing this for a number of years and has a lot of research evidence behind it, but is very intense. So it's 12 sessions with the parents. It's a 2-hour session on each evening for about 12 weeks, and then 60 teaching sessions with children during preschool class time. There's teacher training, and then the people who deliver these sessions are master's level mental health specialists employed by Head Start who have been intensively trained in this behavioral intervention for children, as well as the Head Start teachers. The Head Start teachers have all attended a 3 to 4 day training on this curriculum, and the mental health specialists, we actually flew to Seattle to get specially trained in how to do this. The topics in broad sweeping overview are strengthening children's social skills, emotional regulation and school readiness, using praise and incentives to encourage cooperative behavior, positive discipline, rules, routines, and effective limit setting, and positive discipline with regard to handling misbehavior. And then there are 3 study arms, and our big question is which one is going to work best. So the arm that we think is going to work best is POPS plus IYS. So this is the obesity prevention program that I described in POPS for children and their parents, and the intensive parenting program, IYS, working to improve children's ability to regulate emotion and behavior. We think this will be the most effective, but we'll find out. We think second most effective will be POPS, which is the standard obesity prevention program for children and their parents, basically where we say, encourage your child to eat more vegetables, and here are some tips how to do it. This, we believe, will be the second most effective. And then the control arm, the group that is not getting any specific intervention, just goes to Head Start as they usually would. And we think that will have some effect. There's some evidence that Head Start itself actually has a beneficial effect on preventing childhood obesity, but we think the effect will be limited. So in summary, childhood obesity is an epidemic. Low-income children are more likely to be obese for reasons that we haven't fully sorted out, but is definitely multifactorial. Usual interventions explaining to children and their parents to eat healthier and exercise more are only modestly effective, so we have to find a new way to do this. Parents have complicated feelings about their children, about feeding their children and the causes of childhood obesity. Stress and using food to cope with stress may increase children's obesity risk and could therefore be a point for intervention that people aren't really focusing on yet right now. And then helping children cope with stress more effectively may be an effective intervention, which is the focus of this last grant. So with that, those are our acknowledgments, our funders, and we have co-investigators from the University of Michigan, but we also work together with Michigan State on this project. And so it's a good collaborative effort between the universities. So that's it. Can I open it up to questions? Yes?
Your 3 study arms, are you doing each of those in each of the regions that you're operating in?
Yeah, let me repeat just so everyone can hear. Her question was, are we doing those 3 study arms in each of the regions? Yes. So for lots of reasons you can imagine related to study design, but each Head Start has each arm. And so practically speaking, actually each Head Start has 2 classrooms each year in each arm. It's not the entire Head Start program.
Why were those particular sites?
The Head Start sites?
Yeah.
Excellent question. So the Jackson Community Action Agency Head Start site is about an hour from Ann Arbor, and I started working with them back in 2003, 2004, and I've been working with them for a very long time. I went to them and said, hey, can you give me some suggestions about other Head Start sites that you think might be interested in this? And I will say we approached some sites who actually turned us down. Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm very sensitive to that. I understand it. Inviting researchers into your Head Start program, it's a big deal. And we're very sensitive and try really hard to be flexible, but it's a working relationship. And so that was how those sites were chosen. I'll also mention as a side note, more recently we actually emailed every Head Start program director around the state and said, you know, we're looking to analyze changes in obesity prevalence within Head Start programs around the state and how it might be related to the programming that you may be trying to do within your own Head Start program. And would you be willing to provide us with your the weights and heights of the children enrolled in your Head Start program with no identifying information? We don't want any information about the kids, just weights and heights. And it was interesting. We got about a 50% response rate. 50% of the programs, it was interesting, they actually responded with extreme enthusiasm, and they were emailing, I mean, you in this room I think experienced this, with some desperation. And they said, are you telling me that you could help us look at our weights and heights in our program and see if our programming is making a difference? And I said, yes, if you would be willing to share your data with us. And so that we're applying for a grant to do that, which hopefully we will receive and be able to look at that. And so let me repeat the question because I think they need it for the tape. So he first of all commended and said this is important work. Secondly, your question was how do you get parents to recognize that there is a problem? And third, when you asked is there a behavior modification program embedded in it, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by behavior modification?
First off, you got to give them a recognized need. And because the child comes out of an environment that's contributing to their obesity, then something's got to be done to deal with that environment. And that would be behavior modification of the parent.
Oh, of the parent, yeah. So again, for the tape, he was saying that because the child is coming out of a home where there's probably obesity and an obesity-promoting environment, there has to be something done addressing the behavior of the parent and that sort of thing. So let me address the first question first about how do you get parents to recognize that there's a problem. So I didn't review this today, but we've been doing some work of this on our own where we interview mothers alone in a room to try to understand their perspective on obesity. And as those of you who are on the front lines probably already realize deep in your soul, mothers really don't think there's a problem, especially when the kids are younger than about 7. And the mothers will generally say, you know, it's baby fat, my child's going to grow out of it. Even pediatricians think the children are going to grow out of it. Or they'll say, well, my family's just big boned, this is just the way he is, he has a big appetite. And I think the interesting thing is, indeed, the family is big, and indeed the child does have a big appetite. And I think the mothers are really struggling with when my 3- and 4-year-old is big boned and is saying, Mom, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. It's against like maternal instinct to say, no, I'm not feeding you, right? It's just against your grain. And so mothers, I think, really need a lot of help trying to differentiate, is this child really hungry or not? And how do I deal with it when I say to my child, no, I'm not going to give them food, they're going to have a tantrum. The other issue is I think both mothers, but also professionals and pediatricians, our entire frame for obesity has shifted. So whereas in the 1970s there was one child in the class who was obese and it was very obvious who that one obese child is, Now, because 20% of the kids in the class are obese, and because 40% of them are overweight, and because very few children are actually on the thin end of the curve, even the ones who aren't overweight are still shifted up, I think people have a really difficult time looking at a child's body type and knowing, is that child overweight or not? And my research staff, who this is what they do for a living, they go out and they measure children's